Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Alien Force Retrospectives. And today we're going to be talking about episode 46 of Ben 10 Alien Force / the final episode of the series, The Final Battle, Part 2. And so, because this is a two-parter, we should recap what happened in the last part. Albedo and Vilgax had teamed up, and Albedo had stolen a device from Azimuth called the Ultimatrix. Essentially, it was an incomplete Omnitrix core that Albedo fashioned onto a new wrist mount that would get that while still giving him access to all of Ben's aliens would also allowed him to, as he put it, evolve those aliens into their ultimate forms. With all this power, Albedo and Vilgax kidnapped Gwen and Kevin and lured Ben to a mine shaft. As such, Ben went to confront them. Ben went to go confront them, and he fought Albedo, but Albedo managed to beat Ben with Ultimate Humungosaur, and so Vilgax appeared with an army of these white robots and said that if Ben didn't hand over the Omnitrix, he'd kill Gwen and Kevin. As such, the last episode ended with Ben removing the Omnitrix via a voice command that I guess he implemented off-screen, and handing the Omnitrix over to Vilgax. As such, that's exactly where this is picking up, with Vilgax pretty much just gloating to Ben, which I think would make sense. He's just gloated, because Ben's beaten him so many times, and now to finally have one on him, to finally get the Omnitrix, I think he would savor in the victory. Before he can get Ben to do anything for him, Max comes in and starts shooting up the place. He manages to free Gwen and Kevin, and before their ultimate Humungosaur chow, he hands Gwen over her spellbook, and she uses the spell inside to teleport the group away. Albedo at first wants to go after them, but Vilgax says, "Why bother? I'm going to conquer this planet. At that point, there's no place they can hide." As such, Albedo concedes to that and decides to and then asks Vilgax for the Omnitrix because as part of the deal, Vilgax promised Albedo the Omnitrix. Well. Again, this shows how Albedo was kind of holding the idiot since it was Albedo's turn to hold the idiot stick for this two-parter. Predictably, Vilgax doesn't hand over the Omnitrix. In fact, he slaps it on his wrist, and something that I like is that it actually grows so that it fits Vilgax. Albedo still isn't. At this point, this is all. And this is also where something... And, of course, Albedo says that why do you do that? You have so much power, the Omnitrix doesn't mean anything to you. And Vilgax says, yes, but it's of use to the robots. It turns out that all these robots he's brought, they're called bioids. Essentially, they're synthetic robots with blank DNA, and they're somehow synced up to the Omnitrix. Don't ask me how. I don't know either. I don't really know how, really. I can't even think of an explanation. Because I don't really know. I don't know how they're synced up to the Omnitrix. He makes it sound like that all you have to do is use the Omnitrix and it'll transform the bioids, but if that's the case, then wouldn't they have transformed if Ben used the Omnitrix near them? Or Vilgax? I don't know. Bottom line, for some reason, it means that as long as Vilgax has the Omnitrix, the bioids can transform. I don't know. Maybe it's that you have to actually use the Omnitrix while the bioids are around, and it'll transform them instead of the Omnitrix transforming the wearer, which I think would make some sort of semblance of sense, but they don't explain it, so it's confusing, and that's not going to be the only time I'm going to be a little confused, but pretty much as a test of strength, Vilgax activates the Omnitrix and transforms the bioids into Humungosaur. And honestly, while the whole idea of the Omnitrix somehow being synced up to these robots is a little far-fetched, I kind of like this, because this actually was Vilgax's plan from the very beginning. All the way back in Secrets, that's what he told Ben his plan was. He wanted the Omnitrix so he could mass-produce it, so he could create an army of Omnitrix bearers at his beck and call. An army with that much power he'd be able to use to conquer the universe. And so with the Omnitrix on standby and an army of robots synced up completely to the Omnitrix, it makes sense. So I do kind of like that. It actually is kind of a callback to what Vilgax planned to do with the Omnitrix. As such, Vilgax sicks the army of bioid humongosaurs on Albedo, and while Albedo is able to at least stand a chance against a regular humongosaur, he's clearly outnumbered. It's just, in this point, he's outnumbered. No matter no matter how many times he fights, no matter what he does, the bioids are just too much for him, and they actually do manage to overpower him and force him to transform back into his human form. Which, again, you kind of would think, why would he turn back into Ben if Vilgax is wearing the Omnitrix? But to be fair, if the Omnitrix is synced up to the bioids instead of Vilgax, odds are it would probably, with the Ultimatrix, it probably doesn't really have, it probably is just using whatever DNA is the base for all the other transformations, and since that's Ben's human DNA, it's still going to transform Albedo back into his human forms, and besides that, the Galman DNA is locked. The bottom line, once Albedo is beaten, it turns out that the Tennysons and Kevin were watching it via a spy cam, and the spy cam that's connected to a screen in the rust bucket. Max's plan is to pretty much just retreat and make a new plan so that they can confront Vilgax on their own terms. But unfortunately, Ben is not feeling happy. In fact, they tried telling him that they try to get him to make a plan, but he doesn't want to do it, and he gets so upset that he tells Max to stop the rust bucket, and he runs out, and it's now raining wherever they are. And it turns out Gwen eventually goes to meet him because he forgot his jacket, but Ben's not too mopey, and I don't know. This is kind of a scene. This whole scene kind of feels like, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about this scene. I don't really like it seemed to be touching on the whole Ben feels useless without the Omnitrix trope, which, in my opinion, is dumb, because we touched on that before. Twice, actually. The first time was in Gwen 10 when Ben still was able to do stuff, even though the Omnitrix went to Gwen and Max in that episode. And you can forgive that it was touched on again because Gwen 10 was a non-canon. And the second time we touched on it was in Ben 10, Secret of the Omnitrix, where Ben was throughout the film was constantly afraid that without the Omnitrix he would feel that he'd be useless and that he wouldn't be able to do anything. And yet at the end of the episode and at the end of the movie, when the Omnitrix was turned off, Gwen told him that even without the Omnitrix he was still a hero. He still helped people. So it doesn't matter So I don't know about that one, but maybe like, if you want to get technical, you could easily say that maybe he feels like maybe he is kind of feeling that maybe he blames himself for what's going on because Vilgax finally has the Omnitrix, and without dumb writing to hold him back, he now has an army of robots that are synced up to it, and the army apparently is in the hundreds of thousands. So with an army like that, with all the power of the Omnitrix behind it, that is something to be afraid of, and Ben probably does blame himself, because he's the one that handed the Omnitrix over. And which, if that's what they're going for, I like that at least. But what happens next is kind of gets under my skin a little, because it's more retconning, and it's a little dumb. Because after Gwen tries to cheer up Ben and fails, she leaves, and Ben just kind of walks by himself, and then just pleads for Azimuth to come help him. To come help him, and at that point Azimuth appears, and well, he chews him out. He tells him about how the Omnitrix was meant for Max, which is something we did establish in the original series. How it was supposed to go to him, but it wound up on Ben by mistake. But apparently Azimuth was aware of this and originally intended to take the Omnitrix back, but apparently Max convinced him to not do that, which I don't buy, at all. Because, no, Azimuth, I don't think Azimuth was even aware of Ben wielding the Omnitrix, and even if he was, I don't think he would have contacted Max, because, case in point, Max didn't know Azimuth. Nobody knew who Azimuth was prior to Secret of the Omnitrix. They actually, Tetrax said the tales of Azimuth were sketchy at best. How would Azimuth have known Max? How would he have gotten in contact with Max? And on top of that, how did he know Ben was it? Was it, I heard it through trivia that there were surveillance devices on the Omnitrix. Well, even then, even if he was aware of that, even if somehow Max convinced him to let Ben keep the Omnitrix, why? Even Max said he was just as surprised as Ben and Gwen when the Omnitrix went up on Ben's wrist, because he thought it was because he didn't believe it. He thought it was a rumor. They like that. That's something they established in the classic series. While the galaxy was aware of the Omnitrix's existence, no one fully believed that it existed until they saw it. They all thought it was rumors. In season 2, back in Truth, when they encountered Max's old partner Phil, and Phil saw Ben use the Omnitrix firsthand, he was just thinking, "Oh my lord, the Omnitrix actually exists?" Because yeah, it's just rumors. No one fully believed that the Omnitrix was a thing. And Max even said that. And on top of that, Tetrax said that the stories of Azimuth were sketchy at best. No one knew Azimuth. He didn't socialize. He secluded himself on a planet because he was paranoid that people would come after him because he was the one that built the Omnitrix. And when everyone did go to him to get the Omnitrix, he was apathetic. He didn't care. He blamed them for what happened in Secret of the Omnitrix. He didn't care what happened because he thought it was their fault. And even when Ben was still fighting, even though he had the Omnitrix, he was actually perplexed. He was not some big righteous guy. Yeah, he created the Omnitrix for understanding, but at the very least, they state that if he was this guy who was so kind that he was this guy who did kind of think this far ahead, thought of the greater good, then whatever that was blotted out thanks to people thanks to people like Vilgax who wanted to use the Omnitrix as a weapon rather than a device for understanding other races and species. As such, I don't really buy this whole, oh, I wanted to take it back, but your grandfather convinced me, even though we established that he wouldn't have liked it if anybody had the Omnitrix, and odds are Max didn't talk to him. I don't know, this is a minor thing, but it just kind of is like a screw you, because again, Max was an active plumber, he didn't have communications, he did have some high-tech stuff in the rust bucket, but I doubt that would have been stuff like that. And I don't know, again, I don't know. I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second that he knew or was trying to contact him. But again, that's just one part of it. He does talk about how as Ben grew older and even when he was younger, again, it was Ben that got him out of this funk because Ben was the one that showed him that despite his attitude, I'm still getting on this because it does annoy me. This is continuity. These are big continuity errors. But bottom line, he does talk about how Ben used the Omnitrix for so many things that he never dreamed of, but then he lost faith in Ben when he deliberately disobeyed him and tried to hack the Omnitrix. However, despite all this, Ben still is pleading with him, well, can you please tell him what I have to do? How do I stop Vilgax? I can't beat him without the Omnitrix. To which Azimuth responds with, yes, it is hard to win without the Omnitrix, isn't it? And with that, Ben actually has an idea of how to stop them. As such, he meets back up with the group, with Gwen, Kevin, and Max, and they're able to form a new plan. While meanwhile in space, Vilgax is getting ready to conquer the planet. He's got Albedo locked on an X-frame, but before he can attack the ship, the group teleports in front of him, ready to challenge him. Vilgax, of course, thinks that they're pretty much screwed as he brings out a group of bioids, which even he. And while they're a large number, he admits that there's an even larger number spread throughout the ship. And just to demonstrate how powerful he is, he uses the Omnitrix to just transform them into random aliens, like Diamond Head, Lodestar, Spider Monkey, etc. I will openly admit I kind of find it because this is kind of something weird. Whenever the bioids transform, they yell out the name of whatever alien it is, which I don't buy. Which again is weird. Because those are the names Ben gave those aliens. Like, maybe it has to do with the Omnitrix AI, because back with the Vengeance, when Ben unlocked the Master Control, all he had to do was say the name of the alien the name he gave the alien, and the Omnitrix would transform into that alien. So maybe it's because the Omnitrix is personalized, but it makes sense because the Omnitrix did go by voice command. Did operate by Ben's voice command. Maybe it registers all the alien names. It's like, okay, so when you say Spider Monkey, you mean Arachnid Chimp, etc. Maybe it's hard coded into the Omnitrix. That would kind of make sense in that regard. And if that was hard coded into the Omnitrix, it would explain why the bioids did that. But I don't know. I'm rationalizing it. But speaking of voice commands, That's actually kind of how Ben Trick gets to Vilgax, and I'm glad and kind of since I talk going back to Secret of the Omnitrix, Ben says that that Vilgax will give him the Omnitrix, and how he does it and how he thinks he'll convince him is by setting the Omnitrix to self-destruct. He activates the voice command, and as the Omnitrix still registers to Ben's voice, and he activates the self-destruct and sets the timer for 30 seconds. Of course, Vilgax points out that that if Ben set the Omnitrix self-destructs, it'll take the universe with it. But Ben does have a counter art. But Ben says that yeah, that's true if I set the charge for over a few days, which I think makes sense. The Omnitrix in Secret of the Omnitrix, the charge was set for 4 days, but the only reason it kept accelerating was because Ben was going alien. But they even said that the excuse for that was because of all the pressure building up when Ben transformed. So yeah, of course the charger probably would actually get higher whenever Ben transformed. So I think that would make sense. But bottom line, the Omnitrix is only set for 30 seconds, so the charge can't build up for that long, meaning that if Vilgax doesn't want to blow up with the Omnitrix, he needs to hand it over. However, Vilgax doesn't believe that Ben would willingly do this, so he transforms the Bioids into Swamp Fire, and it tries to get them to attack Ben, but no, Ben was not bluffing, as the Omnitrix reaches 0 and blows up on Vilgax's wrist, sending him flying into a wall. And this causes all the Bioids to transform back to normal, and I'm guessing it pretty much just turns them into useless piles of junk, as throughout the rest of the episode they're just standing around. So I don't know. I still think that they could easily be a threat, because there's still a lot of them, and they were capable of fighting off. They were still capable of fighting even when they weren't transformed. So I don't know. No, but bottom line, the Omnitrix is destroyed. But the Omnitrix, pretty much, yeah. The Omnitrix is now nothing. It's a pile of junk. In fact, Ben even goes over to Vilgax's form, to Vilgax's unconscious form, and what's left of the Omnitrix, it's beyond repair. It's beyond repair, pretty much. It's nothing but scrap metal at this point. Even the hourglass symbol is gone. It's just nothing now. As such, however, as this is happening, Kevin suddenly convulses and collapses. Everyone goes over to see what's going on, and he transforms back to normal. And they're wondering what's going on, and they state it's barely because the Omnitrix. It's because the Omnitrix was what was keeping Kevin mutated like that. Which, yeah, I buy. It was the accident in hacking the Omnitrix that transformed him into that, and so maybe some latent genetic memory from absorbing all those materials could have activated, and the Omnitrix treated it like another transformation. I think that would make sense as an excuse for why Kevin was still mutated, why Kevin was stuck like that. So, bottom line, since it was the Omnitrix that was keeping him that way, and the Omnitrix is now destroyed, essentially it undoes Kevin's transformation and turns him back to normal, complete with restoring his powers to how they were before. Unfortunately, despite that little happy oh yeah, that reminds me. It also, just to prove, Gwen and Kevin finally kiss on screen, and it's cute. It's just nice. He's normal again. They've had all these moments throughout the show. It's nice to actually finally see them kiss. It's kind of cute. But unfortunately, they don't have long to celebrate, as Vilgax gets back up and he's just pissed. And to try and add insult to injury, and to just try and pretty much what happens is that he knows that now his plans are ruined. He lost his army, he lost the Omnitrix, essentially he's dead, essentially he's doomed, essentially he's dead in the water, so if he's going down, he's taking them with him. So he sets his ship to crash into Bellwood, and since it has an ionic core, I think that's what they called it, when it crashes into Bellwood, it'll take out the entire town. As such, the group realizes they need to get to the auxiliary control and at least steer the ship away, but Vilgax is not going to let them go down without a fight. As such, Gwen, Kevin, and Max go in to fight Vilgax, but while they're doing that, Ben goes to Albedo, because it turns out that while the Omnitrix is destroyed, he did have a plan B. He frees Albedo, but he demands the Ultimatrix. Albedo, of course, isn't willing to do it, so Ben decides to pull the same trick on him. He sets the Ultimatrix to self-destruct because it responds to his voice commands the same way the Omnitrix did, which makes sense because Albedo's base form is him, And again, Albedo thinks Ben is bluffing, but only this time Ben has proof that he's not in the form of the Omnitrix. And I don't know. I feel like this, and yeah, I actually read a comic that points out how Albedo could have done this because since the Ultimatrix responds to Ben's voice commands, Albedo could easily just disarm the self-destruct. Like, Ben could set it, Albedo could disarm it, because he's essentially in no trouble. I'm guessing that maybe if he did that, Ben would just continually re-trigger it, or Albedo, but again, you could say that Albedo could easily shut off the voice command, but again, I don't know. Bottom line, Albedo doesn't chance it and does actually remove the Ultimatrix, which is easier to remove, just hits a switch and it comes up, and he's able to slip it off. As such, Ben puts it on, disarms the self-destruct, turns it green, and goes to fight Vilgax. However, or at least Ben and Kevin, he goes to fight Ben and Kevin go to fight Vilgax while Gwen and Max go to steer the ship. They manage to aim it for the ocean, but Vilgax is still more powerful. He's still stronger than Ben and Kevin. However, Ben decides that he's going to up the ante as Ben activates the evolution function on the Ultimatrix and evolves he turned into Swamp Fire. Evolves Swamp Fire into Ultimate Swamp Fire. Again, I like this design too. In this case, while Swamp Fire looked like a tree, Ultimate Swamp Fire Swamp Fire looks like a plant. Ultimate Swamp Fire is the one that looks like a tree. He's darker, looks more rooty. His pods actually do look like tops of trees, with his head located in one of them. His firepower is stronger. He's bigger. Pretty much, Ben has now gotten a larger advantage. As such, Ben and Kevin are able to get are able to get some leeway against Vilgax, while Gwen and Max are able to steer the ship into the ocean. And while Gwen and Max and Kevin are able to escape, Ben and Vilgax are still on board. But as the ship goes into the ocean, Vilgax starts smiling and says, "You now are about to face the truth. You're doomed now that you're in my element." And Ben makes actually a funny joke about how a sinking ship is Vilgax's element. But Vilgax tells him that you've yet to see the true form of you're about to face the true form of Vilgax. At which point he destroys the glass in the main ship, and the whole thing gets flooded. However, as Vilgax goes in, he suddenly transforms, and as Ben tries getting out of the water, a tentacle comes up and grabs him and pulls him under. And it turns out Vilgax's true form was a giant squid. Okay, I buy it, I think. Like, can all Chimera sui generis turn into this? Can all of Vilgax's species become giant squids when they're in water? I don't know. But bottom line, Vilgax is a giant squid. He tries eating Ben. So Ben manages to go alien and get out of there, or go jet ray. While in the meantime, Gwen, Kevin, and Max manage to escape and get on, with Gwen creating a little life raft for them. While the ship does go boom, but again, Ben made it out of there as a jet ray, and he settles down, and they say that if Vilgax survived that, then it's hero time. So on the whole, what did I think of the final battle? It's alright. As a finale, it's alright. I think the first half is a lot better than the second half. The first half set things up more dynamically, more organically. It felt like an actual build-up. Actually, did set up a peril, and while there were some minor things that kind of made me raise an eyebrow, it still kind of felt like an actual build-up. And while the second half actually does feel like a definite payoff, as Vilgax now has an army, he has the Omnitrix, and he's ready to take over the universe, I don't know. I feel like the second half is riddled with more problems. Like, I already mentioned the plot holes like how are the bioids connected to the Omnitrix? We don't know. We can only speculate. Why the retcon with Azimuth somehow making contact with Max? I don't like that at all. Why Albedo doesn't just do that? And even the ending. I feel like the ending is a little rushed. And on top of that, and that's something I forgot to mention, Albedo just disappears. After he hands the Ultimatrix over to Ben, he vanishes, never to be seen again. Well, scratch that. He is seen again, but we don't know where he went. He could have easily escaped. Maybe he got on an escape pod and ran while all the action was going down. I don't know. I don't know. It's not explained how he got out of there. And the next time we see him is in either, if you want to go by continuity, either in an episode of Ultimate Alien where they say he was stranded on Earth and decided to make a living at making a Ben 10 stage show, which it would make more sense when you watch Ultimate Alien, or Cosmic Destruction, where he somehow wound up on the other end of the galaxy with a strand of Tokustar DNA that he managed to incubate until he was able to use it to transform himself into an evil Waybig. Like, I don't know. He's just forgotten after he hands the Ultimatrix over to Ben. He's just gone. Don't know what happened to him, just gone. I don't really know. I don't really understand that. And again, there are some plot holes in retcons that I don't really think make sense. That there's material that's retreaded, and while it does address some stuff, I don't know. I don't really. Some things that are not. It's not like part 2 is bad. There are still a lot of good parts. Again, the idea Vilgax finally having an army of these of robots that can transform into all of Ben's aliens, actually having the army he's been talking about ever since the classic series. That's good. I like that. To see, and while the scene with Ben being melodramatic, I feel like it did kind of touch on some stuff. I felt like it could have touched on some stuff. I do actually feel like if Ben was kind of partially blaming himself for this, I think it would make for some good drama, and I think that it does kind of make for some good drama up until the retcons. I like seeing Ben thinking cleverly. I like that they do address that. I like that that Kevin is now normal again, and they do address why he was stuck like that. I do actually like that. I like seeing that. And on top of that, I like seeing Ben using the Ultimatrix to fight Vilgax. It's just that there are other things in there that hamper the episode. Not ruin it, but hamper it. And it does get under my skin a little. On top of that, this is something I actually did forget. This is something that I kind of forgot to mention. And I think, in my honest opinion, that there is a strength in the two-parter because all the way back in part 1, Ben mentioned something. Hold on a sec. Sorry about that. I had to answer a text from my mother. Anyway, like, in the first part, Ben seemed a lot more overly cocky. And on top of that, it seemed that Ben was going to... On top of that, Ben seemed to have this high opinion of himself, that he could never lose, I'm on top of the world, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same, and it was the same annoying cockiness we've seen throughout Season 3. However, I think a strength of this two-parter is that it finally calls Ben out on that attitude. It's Ben, like... Ben's cocky. Ben is so overly cocky about this. Like, he thinks, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. And now he comes across two opponents that use that against him. They kidnap his friends on his watch, and on top of that, he faces an opponent that not only is unequal to him, but stronger to him. He's beaten. He loses the most powerful device in the universe, and actually just gave it right to one of the universe's worst criminals. I think that is a big blow. That is directly Ben's fault, and I think that would actually explain why Ben would be in such a big funk at that point. It actually would make sense, and I think that does well for some. Does well. Again, there are still some story problems. I have some problems. I actually do have issues with, like how Albedo got out. That you could say Vilgax broke him out. Where he went at the end. How the biodes are synced up to the retcons. There are problems with this, and another problem I have is that it feels like it's not the end. Again, I think the ending felt a little rushed. Not a lot, but a little. That it just kind of felt like it didn't feel like it was a build-up or a finale. It just stopped. Like ship goes up, hero time, credits. Not even time to let it sink in. Just stops. It doesn't feel as grand in that regard. However, for a finale to Ben 10 Alien Force, I'll admit, it's not bad. It's still decent. It still has good action. I still like seeing Albedo and Vilgax, and I do like the transitioning. And on top of that, I do kind of like the Ultimate forms. I do like that. On top of that, I might as well talk about my thoughts on the Ultimatrix, because it is something that I do want to talk about. And unfortunately, I will openly admit, the Ultimatrix is my least favorite design for the Omnitrix. I don't hate it, because I like the idea surrounding it, essentially a more powerful Omnitrix that can evolve the aliens, but design-wise, it's my least favorite design for the Omnitrix. It's mostly just because of how bulky it is. That looks like a gauntlet rather than a watch. Again, That was one of the reasons why the Alien Force design for the Omnitrix was one of my favorites, because it was so slim. It was a wristwatch. It could fit anywhere. And again, that's one of the reasons, and that's one of the reasons why the Omniverse design is my second favorite, because it's just as slim. It's my only problem is that it doesn't have the dial select, which I like. Which I think that's like a make or break factor, because I like the dial. Because I like the twist dial over the hologram selection, whatever. I prefer the dial. But again, when it comes to the Ultimate, like the Ultimatrix is a device I'm okay with. I like it. It's the design. I just don't like the design. That is my only problem with the Ultimatrix. Otherwise, it's fine. And again, I love the idea of the Ultimate transformations. And Ultimate Swampfire had a good first outing, as help build into it. And on top of that, I think one of the reasons why this didn't feel like, I think that might be one of the reasons why this didn't feel like a full finale, because this is supposed to lead directly into the sequel series, the third series, Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, which essentially but I think takes place like a few weeks later. Everyone's now a year older, and just seeing how and seeing Ben with the Ultimatrix, as well as a few other status quo changes. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. On the whole, the final battle's a decent finale, not great, has its fair share of problems, but on the whole, worth a watch. At least a watch. Like, I think the more you watch it, the more you can see the problems. But again, not an awful finale, but not great. Just decent, middle of the road. Good. Yeah, I guess that pretty much wraps that up. I'm Samuel Johnson, and while we're done with Ben 10 Alien Force, we're not done with the Alien Force retrospectives. There is still one more video that I want to do for the Alien Force retrospectives. And if you're wondering what it is, I'm going to leave that for a surprise. But I will give you some fair warning. When I do my next video, some of you may be a little disappointed. Not with maybe the video's contents, or maybe you will be disappointed. I could easily just be building myself for nothing. But I think that when I unveil the video and what I'm going to be looking at, some of you may be a little disappointed with me in some regard. On top, and you're probably wondering, well, what could you be looking at that'll make you so disappointed? Well, you're gonna have to find out. But I will give you this one hint: if you've been watching this along with me, if you've been watching on the DVDs, then you've already seen what I'm gonna be looking at next week. But if you haven't, tune in next week for the final episode of the Alien Force retrospectives. So, till we meet again, I'm Samuel Johnson, and you take care. Bye.